How's it going, everyone? Austin Honecker here. I just wanted to come on here for a while and give them a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Rampage from 2 nights ago, which was November 4th, 2022. I gotta say, it was awesome from start to finish. For the matches, match 1, it was Orange Cassidy versus Katsuyori Shibata for the AEW All-Atlantic title. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Orange Cassidy went over and retained the AEW All-Atlantic title with the Orange Punch. Match 2, it was Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter versus Madison Rayne and Sky Blue. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter went over cause Jamie Hayter pinned Madison Rayne with the ripcord lariat. Now after the match, Jamie Hayter was beating the shit out of Madison Rayne, and while that was going on, Britt Baker got on the microphone and cut a promo talking about how Tony Storm has been talking shit about Jamie Hayter being a bully and everything, and talked about how Jamie Hayter was going to kick Tony Storm's ass at Full Gear and become the interim AEW Women's Champion and everything. And as Britt Baker was talking shit and Jamie Hayter was beating the shit out of Madison Rayne, Sky Blue came in to try to intervene, but Jamie Hayter ended up beating the shit out of Sky Blue as well. And as Britt Baker continued to talk more shit, well, Rebel was in the ring while that was going on, but Tony Storm came out and Rebel tried to charge at Tony Storm, but Tony Storm laid Rebel out with a knockout punch, and Britt Baker tried to attack. As Rebel was laid out, Britt Baker tried to attack Tony Storm, but Tony Storm kicked Britt Baker in the stomach and threw her into the barricade. Then Tony Storm got into the ring, and then a brawl between Tony Storm and Jamie Hayter ensued. Both women, which are Tony Storm and Jamie Hayter, were beating the shit out of each other, but Tony Storm ended up getting the best of it, and Tony Storm ended up executing the Texas Cloverleaf on Jamie Hayter, and as Tony Storm had Jamie Hayter locked in the Texas Cloverleaf, Britt Baker came into the ring with the interim AEW Women's title, and Britt Baker attacked Britt Baker attacked Tony Storm with the AEW interim Women's title and laid her out, and Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter stood tall while Tony Storm was laid out and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way. And match 3, which was the main event, it was Wardlow, which are Samoa Joe and Wardlow, versus Gates of Agony, which are Toa Leona and Khan. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Wardlow went over because Wardlow pinned Khan with the Powerbomb Symphony. Now after the match, as Wardlow, which are Samoa Joe and Wardlow, were celebrating their victory, Powerhouse Hobbs came out on stage and a stare down between Wardlow and Powerhouse Hobbs ensued and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way, and that was match 3 and the main event, by the way. Now, besides the matches, AEW aired a vignette of the build-up of the match between Orange Cassidy versus Katsuyori Shibata for the AEW All-Atlantic title. That was cool. Lexi Nair interviewed Tony Storm. Lexi Nair brought up about Tony Storm defending the AEW interim women's title and everything, and Tony Storm was talking about how her and Jamie Hayter were roommates in the United Kingdom during the pandemic because of COVID and having to quarantine and everything. And Tony Storm was also talking about how Jamie Hayter, since she's arrived in AEW, has become nothing but a bully and is being manipulated and used by Britt Baker and everything. And Toni Storm was also talking about how at Full Gear she was going to kick Jamie Hayter's ass and retain the AEW interim women's title and everything. That was cool. Lexi Nair interviewed the Blackpool Combat Club, which are William Regal, Bryan Danielson, and Claudio Castagnoli. Well, Lexi Nair brought up about the Blackpool Combat Club going after Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor World title and everything, and Claudio Castagnoli was talking about how he had no problem with Chris Jericho being the Ring of Honor World Champion, but he had a problem with Chris Jericho taking out commentators like Ian Riccaboni and everything, and Claudio Castagnoli talked about how he's a former Ring of Honor World Champion and how how he's never gotten his rematch and how he wants his rematch and everything. Bryan Danielson was talking about how he also is a former Ring of Honor World Champion and talked about how Rampage wasn't long enough and talked about how he wanted another shot at the Ring of Honor World title as well. And William Regal was talking about how Chris Jericho needs to take his pick of who he wants to face for the Ring of Honor World title and everything. That was cool. Tony Schiavone interviewed the Jericho Appreciation Society, which are Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. Well, Tony Schiavone brought up about how the Blackpool Combat Club issued an open challenge to Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor World title and everything, and Tony Schiavone brought up about Chris Jericho attacking commentators and told him to stop doing it and everything, and Chris Jericho was saying, commentators, okay, I'll do that, Tony. Backstage interviewers, I can't promise that. Tony Schiavone said, whoa, buddy. And everything. And then Chris Jericho was talking about how William Regal has had general manager experience and talked about how how William Regal thinks he can just tell Chris Jericho what to do. Well, that's not the case. And Chris Jericho was also talking about how the Blackpool Combat Club don't really like each other and how they can't stand to be around each other, and how if he gives the Blackpool Combat Club what they want, Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli will beat the shit out of each other during the match. And Chris Jericho was talking about how he's not going to go at it alone because he's going to make it a four-way match. Chris Jericho himself versus Claudio Castagnoli versus Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara for the Ring of Honor World title. And Chris Jericho talked about how Sammy Guevara has been by his side since day one, never had any arguments or disagreements or anything, and talked about how he's been there since the Inner Circle days and the Jericho Appreciation Society days, and talked about how he's there now, and Chris Jericho was also saying to Sammy Guevara, Sammy, I know you'll do the right thing, won't you, little buddy? And Chris Jericho left, and Sammy Guevara was looking on and everything. That was cool. Ricky Starks came out and cut a promo talking about how everybody's been wondering where he's been, why he hasn't been on AEW television and everything. And Ricky Starks talked about how the fans like him and how he likes them too and everything. And Ricky Starks was also Ricky Starks was also talking about how he's going to be entering the AEW title tournament and everything. That was cool. Tony Schiavone interviewed Sammy Guevara. Well, Tony Schiavone brought up to Sammy Guevara about Chris Jericho's comments about doing the right thing and making sure Chris Jericho is still the Ring of Honor World Champion again and everything. And Sammy Guevara was saying, Tony, let's not talk about that, because I know the Ring of Honor World title is still going to be staying with the Jericho Appreciation Society. But speaking of Bryan Danielson, yeah, Bryan Danielson and I went to war. He kicked my ass. So what? I looked up to Bryan Danielson when I was a kid. I worked at Subway watching Bryan Danielson compete, and I wanted to be just like him. So, Bryan Danielson, since we already faced off and you beat me, how about next week on Dynamite, it's me and you in a 2 out of 3 falls, because I'm going to beat your ass twice in one night, and everything. That was cool. And Mark Henry interviewed Ward Joe, which are Samoa Joe and Wardlow, and the Embassy, which are Prince Nana, Toa Leona, and Khan. Well, Mark Henry brought up to Prince Nana, saying, Prince Nana, tonight, your boys, Toa Leona and Khan, the Gates of Agony, will be facing off against Ward Joe. Are you ready? Prince Nana said, ha ha ha. Mark, what makes you ask that? Of course, my boys of the Embassy, the Gates of Agony, Toa Leona and Khan, we're always ready. And we are going to take out Ward Joe tonight. And everything. And then Wardlow was saying, well, Samoa Joe was getting ready to talk, but Wardlow cut him off, and Wardlow said, tonight, I'm not worried about the Gates of Agony, because Powerhouse Hobbs, you've not only attacked me once, but you've attacked me twice. And it's not going to happen again, because if you keep coming at me, I'm going to kick your ass. Then Wardlow walked off, and Samoa Joe ended up walking off, and Mark Henry said his signature line, well, looks like there's been enough talk. It's time for the main event, and everything. That was cool. Now, besides all that, Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur done commentary throughout the whole show. They done awesome as usual. And Mike Tyson done guest commentary along with Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur during the match between Orange Cassidy versus Katsuyori Shibata for the AEW All-Atlantic title. Mike Tyson done great on guest commentary. The referees for the event were Paul Turner, Stephon Smith, and Aubrey Edwards. Stephon Smith refereed the match between Orange Cassidy versus Katsuyori Shibata for the AEW All-Atlantic title. That was Stephon Smith, by the way. Paul Turner refereed the match between Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter versus Madison Rayne and Sky Blue. And Aubrey Edwards refereed the match between Ward Joe versus Gates of Agony. All the referees done awesome as usual. Now, the match card that's been announced for All Elite Wrestling's pay-per-view event Full Gear on November 19th, it's going to be Jon Moxley versus MJF for the AEW title. The Acclaimed, which are Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, versus Swerve and Our Glory, which are Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, for the AEW Tag Team titles. Tony Storm versus Jamie Hayter for the AEW Interim Women's title. And Chris Jericho versus Bryan Danielson versus Claudio Castagnoli versus Sammy Guevara in a 4-way match for the Ring of Honor World title. Those are the matches that have been announced so far. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's pay-per-view event Full Gear on November 19th that's been announced so far looks like it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it, and I'm looking forward to it. Oh, also, I forgot there's one more match that's been announced for All Elite Wrestling's pay-per-view event Full Gear, and that is a AEW title tournament final match to determine the number one contender for the AEW title. That's what I forgot to add. Now, the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite Wednesday night that's been announced so far. It's going to be Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara in a 2 out of 3 falls match. FTR, which are Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, and The Acclaimed, which are Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, versus Swerve and Our Glory, which are Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, and The Guns, which are Colton and Austin Gunn. Eddie Kingston versus Ethan Page in an AEW title tournament quarterfinal match, and Jamie Hayter versus Sky Blue. Those are the matches that have been announced so far. Now, besides the matches that have been announced so far, John Moxley will be appearing live, and Saraya and Britt Baker will be having a face-to-face confrontation. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite Wednesday night that's been announced so far looks like it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it, and I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, I just wanted to come on here for a while and give them a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Rampage from 2 nights ago, which was November 4th, 2022. Like I said, it was awesome from start to finish. And with that being said, my name is Austin Honecker, and I will catch your fucking ass down the goddamn road. Peace out.